The sun had barely risen over the ravines of Babyn Yar on September 29, 1941, when the gunfire began, relentless, methodical, deafening. In just 2 days, more than 33,000 Jews were murdered there, not by gas chambers or camps, but by bullets. This was not an isolated atrocity, but part of a larger, hidden chapter of the Holocaust, known as the Holocaust by bullets. Unlike the industrialized slaughter in Auschwitz or Treblinka, this wave of mass murder was deeply personal, executed at close range by German Einsatzgruppen, police battalions, and often with help from local collaborators. Beginning with Operation Barbarossa, Nazi Germany's invasion of the Soviet Union in June 1941, these killing squads swept across Eastern Europe, leaving behind fields of corpses and erased communities. This is the painful story of how the Holocaust began, not in the gas chambers, but with gunfire echoing through the forests and fields of the East. On June 22, 1941, Adolf Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa, the largest military invasion in history, targeting the Soviet Union with over 3 million German troops. But this was more than a military campaign. It was an ideological war aimed at destroying Judeo-Bolshevism and securing Lebensraum for the German people. The invasion marked a violent turning point in the Holocaust. Before the first shots were fired, Nazi leaders had already given secret orders to annihilate Jews, communists, and other undesirables in the occupied territories. Special SS units, called Einsatzgruppen, followed closely behind the army, tasked with hunting down and killing these targeted groups. Barbarossa wasn't just a clash of armies, it was a green light for genocide. The front lines of war became front lines of extermination. As the Wehrmacht advanced deep into Soviet territory, the mass killings began, village by village, bullet by bullet. The Holocaust by bullets did not rely on gas chambers or camps. It unfolded in forests, ravines, and open fields where death came at close range. The primary agents were the Einsatzgruppen, mobile killing units composed of SS, Gestapo, and criminal police. Numbering around 3,000 men across 4 main groups, they followed the German army into Soviet lands with a singular mission: execute Jews, Roma, communists, and other perceived enemies. The process was systematic. First, local Jews were ordered to register or assemble, often under the pretense of relocation. They were marched, sometimes with assistance from local collaborators, to remote killing sites. There, victims were forced to undress, hand over valuables, and line up at the edge of pits or ravines. Firing squads gunned them down in waves. The next group would be forced to lie atop the corpses before being shot. Some victims were buried alive. The role of Wehrmacht soldiers, local police, and civilian collaborators was crucial. They often provided logistical support, cordoned off areas, or even participated in the executions. This was genocide stripped of machinery, raw, brutal, and intimate. The Holocaust by bullets left behind a trail of mass graves across Eastern Europe. Each massacre tells a story of calculated cruelty, with entire communities annihilated in days. Babyn Yar, Ukraine. On September 29–30, 1941, following the German occupation of Kyiv, over 33,000 Jewish men, women, and children were marched to Babyn Yar, a ravine on the city's edge. Ordered to bring their belongings as if being relocated, they were instead stripped, shot, and dumped into the ravine by Einsatzgruppe, with help from German police and local auxiliaries. For 2 days, the killing continued without pause, one of the largest single massacres of Jews during the Holocaust. Kamianets-Podilsky Massacre. In late August 1941, in Kamianets-Podilsky, approximately 23,600 Jews, many of them Hungarian Jews deported into German hands, were murdered over a few days. This marked one of the earliest mass killings of the Holocaust and demonstrated how coordination between Axis powers led to wholesale slaughter. Plunje and other Baltic massacres. In towns like Plunje and Minsk, mass shootings were often initiated by local militias before German forces took full control. In Plunja, within days of Nazi arrival in June 1941, local Lithuanian collaborators executed nearly the entire Jewish population, around 1,700 people. In Minsk, thousands were executed in the first few weeks of occupation, often in the woods outside the city. These case studies illustrate the terrifying efficiency and local involvement of the killings. No ghettos, no deportations, just immediate, ruthless extermination, often with neighbors watching, helping, or turning away. Between June 1941 and early 1943, historians estimate that 1.5 to 2 million Jews were murdered by bullets in the territories conquered during Operation Barbarossa. These killings occurred across present-day Ukraine, Belarus, Lithuania, Latvia, Moldova, and parts of Russia, often within days or weeks of German occupation. This method of murder accounted for nearly 40% of all Jewish victims in the Holocaust in Eastern Europe, according to Yad Vashem. The Einsatzgruppen, with support from German police battalions, Wehrmacht units, and local collaborators, documented many of their actions, like the chilling Jaeger report, which logged over 137,000 deaths in just 5 months in Lithuania. Unlike the industrialized killing centers that followed, this phase of genocide was decentralized and immediate. Victims weren't deported, they were hunted in their hometowns, often executed in the very forests and fields they had once called home. The Holocaust by bullets wasn't just a military byproduct, it was a central part of Nazi ideology. Adolf Hitler viewed the war against the Soviet Union as an existential battle between Aryan purity and Judeo-Bolshevism. In his eyes, communism and Judaism were intertwined threats that had to be eradicated together. From the outset, Operation Barbarossa was framed not only as a conquest of land, but as a war of annihilation. This meant total destruction of the Soviet state and its undesirable elements, Jews first among them. The Einsatzgruppen operated under explicit orders to eliminate Jews, political commissars, Roma, and others. Key Nazi leaders like Heinrich Himmler and Reinhard Heydrich oversaw the policy and planning. But responsibility extended to many levels. The Wehrmacht often cooperated or turned a blind eye. Local police and civilians were encouraged or coerced to assist. Psychologically, bullets created a problem for the perpetrators. Many SS men suffered trauma from shooting civilians face to face, prompting later shifts toward gas vans and camps. Yet for over a year, bullets remained the regime's most direct and brutal method of genocide. This wasn't spontaneous violence. It was ideology in action, executed with chilling calculation. As the Soviet Red Army began reclaiming territory in 1943, the Nazis attempted to hide the evidence of their crimes. Under Operation 1005, SS units returned to massacre sites to exhume and burn corpses, destroying physical proof of mass shootings. In many places, though, the scars remained: mass graves, eyewitnesses, and traces of lives erased. Survivor testimony was rare. Most Jewish communities were completely annihilated, leaving few voices to speak for the dead. Still, documents like the Jaeger report and post-war trials preserved fragments of the truth. Some local bystanders later came forward, while others denied or minimized their role. For decades, this chapter of the Holocaust was under-recognized. Western focus remained on the camps, especially Auschwitz, while the forests and ravines of Eastern Europe received little attention. Even Holocaust education often overlooked the scale of the Holocaust by bullets. Only in recent years, thanks to researchers like Father Patrick Desbois, who documented thousands of killing sites, has this forgotten genocide gained broader recognition. Memorials now stand at places like Babyn Yar and Kamianets-Podilsky, but countless other sites remain unmarked. The silence that followed these shootings was as chilling as the gunfire that preceded it. The Holocaust by bullets forces us to confront genocide in its rawest form, where murder isn't industrial but personal. There were no factories of death, no miles of barbed wire, just men with rifles, killing families face to face, often with local support. This brutality challenges the idea that evil requires complex systems. Sometimes, all it needs is an ideology, a command, and a gun. The participation of neighbors, local police, and even bystanders reminds us how ordinary people can become accomplices in unimaginable crimes. Remembering these massacres isn't just about honoring the dead, it's a warning. In an age where hate speech spreads quickly and where denial and distortion of the Holocaust persist, these stories demand to be told. The Holocaust didn't begin with Auschwitz. It began with whispers, propaganda, and then gunshots in a nearby forest. If we forget that, we risk letting it happen again. The Holocaust by bullets is one of the most brutal parts of human history. Over 1 million people were killed, not with gas or machines, but with guns, shot one by one. These murders didn't happen in secret. They happened in public places, often with the help or silence of nearby communities. Fields, forests, and ditches became mass graves. Whole Jewish towns and families were wiped out. Many of those places still have no memorials, just quiet ground hiding painful memories. Remembering these people isn't just about the past. It's about learning what hatred can lead to when it's combined with power and silence. These killings show that genocide doesn't need camps. It can begin with words, orders, and guns. As we look at the world today, with rising hate, division, and violence, we have to ask ourselves, if something like this started again, would we see it in time to stop it?